Welcome everybody to a new segment we're trying out over here. We're going to call it the Anime Intermission, where Chris and I, Poster Ghost and Puro, talk about what we've been watching. You know, we saw that it was becoming a huge segment on our podcast that we were doing, so we thought we'd give it its own thing and, you know, give a place to sort of talk about all the things that have been happening in anime.
Yeah, we've been watching anime for a long time. We're what would you would call, well, not gatekeepers. That's not the word I'm looking for. What's the word I'm looking for?
Anime aficionados.
We're elders.
No, we're not.
We're elders now, Zach. That's what we are. We're emo elders, and we're also anime elders now. Very much so, anime elders. Like starting watching anime. You know, like when it first reached the States and Funimation, and, you know, you had to watch Sailor Moon on WB Kids in the morning, like catching bootleg copies of the Dragon Ball Z movies at the mall with, like, really bad voiceovers. Like, I remember I bought it was like a Broly copy that was like that, and just like looking up online and being like, Super Saiyan 4000. That's like where we came from, like the old age of anime.
Yeah, so we're gonna kind of talk about the things we've been watching, thoughts, what we're hoping for. You know, if you agree or hate based off of, you know, if you watched our 5-hour anime tier list or however long it was, we might have some controversial takes. Probably not.
So I figure a good place to start, seeing this is the first episode and it's part of kind of the intro, is what do you think makes a good anime? What to you is a good anime, Zach?
I feel like it's what? Art style, story, and then music. And it depends on which order you prioritize things in.
I agree. I think it has to be a conglomeration of everything. I think it's very important that characters have growth, especially now as we watch stuff. Like when something is overly tropey, or like it seems like it's a lot of Deus Ex Machina, and the character growth or the power growth doesn't feel natural, or even the world growth doesn't feel natural. It really is.
It's too fantastical.
I like to think of it like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. You can't do that to your players, right? So you can't do that to your viewers. You want to take them on a believable ride. Like, sure, you can set up a world where those rules are allowed to be broken, but the world has to be efficiently set up first, you know?
I mean, there has to be a prologue.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know,
you have to lay the foundation.
Exactly. There has to be growth within the world to allow for larger growth of the characters to outside of the world. Like, you know, it can't just be like growth for the sake of power, or growth for the sake of this character needs to be or serve another purpose now.
I feel like the things you just described are the things that I don't like about Gurren Lagann.
Well, I think that's exactly what I mean. There's different ways to enjoy art, and I was going to bring up this point. There's so many different ways, like animation and story. Like there's like you could do like something that's a very concrete style, like the Made in Abyss style or a Ghibli style, where you're like, oh shit, this is art. It's beautiful. It's amazing. And then you have things that are more avant-garde, like Spider-Man and Space Dandy, and even the Yuasa stuff, which you don't like, which is like made by multiple artists, or it has like multimedia effects put into it. And I even think Demon Slayer is a bit of that, where it has that artistic side of it, but it uses it to a point where it's not the sole basis of delivering the art form.
I feel like my problem with those anime in general is that story is a very high priority for me, and when the story is like too much Deus Ex Machina, too much surrealism, like I just don't buy it, and it makes me not like it. When it's so like, oh, we're gonna do something, you know, not controversial, but like we're gonna try to disrupt the status quo or something like that, or like that's what their thing is. They're like their shtick. It doesn't jive with me.
You don't like something that's artistic for the sake of being different. Like it's like, okay, it's not trying to appeal to the greater audience, and it's too niche. You don't like that. It sounds like.
Well, well, here's the thing. Like, I feel like in those instances, like, I think the same thing of, like, music, right? Like, do you make the music you want to make, or do you make what you're trying to sell, right? And I feel like with a medium like that, when they get greenlit, I feel like some kind of producer would have been like, I don't know, people are going to like this. And then it's me. I don't like it.
Well, I agree with that. And I think there's something to be said to have the ability to bring techniques two, like that's like, so you have Ghibli, which is right, like it's like that really beautiful technique, but then you have Made in Abyss, which is bringing a lot of this avant-garde art and darkness into the Ghibli, right? And I'll say the same thing for Demon Slayer, where it's this very kind of like flat shonen story art style, but then they bring in this like really interesting CG effect and to make it more vibrant, to give it more of an artistic take. I think there's something to be said to using techniques and bringing a less mainstream style into a mainstream what's it called? Anime. An anime. You know, that was a very Jeff Goldblum moment. But anyway, speaking of things, you know, that we like and don't like, we are going to talk a little bit about all of the animes that are airing during the current season every time we do talk about this. And
Well, not all of the anime.
Not all
There's
of
a
them.
bunch of things that we didn't watch. We're going to talk about the things that drew us into the world of the anime, and then kind of maybe what we started with, maybe what we stopped.
So, I mean, I guess we'll start with, so we're talking about like substance versus style, and something that kind of lacks all of that right now is Kenshin, which is something that I'm watching. Kenshin, it's like the remake. We all know what the drama between the creator. We talked about it on the podcast. But even the anime itself is just like, ugh, it's like it should have died. Like, it doesn't have the charm of the 90s animation, and it just feels incredibly outdated. The pacing is so, like, it's like, because not only have I seen this, but like, it's not fun to watch.
They haven't really innovated anything. It's like, hey, guess what? We made the same show, but we increased the frame rate. Like, that's kind of what it feels like to me.
And I feel like that takes away the charm. Like, that's the substance comes from the 90s triple shading and more of the hand-drawn art panels and less CG stuff. Like, less, well, cell animation is what it is.
And I think, like, for me, it's like they didn't learn anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's like we're telling the same story. It is a straight up, like, remake. It is like an HD remake of the show in terms of like, these are the episodes, this is the order it goes in, I know everything that's going to happen, and that's it.
I feel like there's a little less filler, like it's taking a little less time, because we're on episode 5 and we're already finished with the guy with the big swords arc. So it's like, all right, they're doing like
that's not that far in.
I know, but like we're at least getting some like compression to the story, which is what they did in Dragon Ball Z Kai. So I feel like that's what the effort is. They're trying to emulate something that Dragon Ball Z Kai did.
Yeah, it's just I watched 2 episodes and I realized what it was doing, and it gave me fucking Princess Yashahime vibes, where it was just like, you're targeting your audience, but your audience has changed. So I was just not into it. I dropped it after 2 episodes.
Yeah, I'm still watching it, but it's almost like morbid curiosity at this point. I just wanted to get to the end. I want to see how they handle the end. Like, how serious is it going to get?
You can tell everybody all about that.
So what are you watching, or what have you that I'm not watching here? You see, Jobless Reincarnation.
So I've been watching Jobless Reincarnation. I watched the first season, which is fantastic. A little bit heavy with the sex stuff, but.
This is sorry, I hate to interrupt, but it's like, this is the thing. It's like you like, oh, story comes first, but you watch so many isekais, and isekais are like so Deus Ex Machina, and they're like there's like no story to them. It's all about character conflict. It's like there's no world building and like.
No, this one actually has that.
Okay.
It actually, the first season is about the character growing up. Mm-hmm. Like, he starts as like a 3-year, like he starts when he's like born, and then they work through him turning. I think the first season he's like maybe like 12 by the end, and it like shows like him learning, getting trained to use magic. I mean, he has like story events, but like the big thing was that he can cast without incantation, which is not something that can normally happen.
Right.
I mean, he's powerful, but I think that the first season is a lot better than the second season so far. It seems like the production, because the first season came out like 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and the first season's production quality was so much higher than the second season.
That sucks.
And like the story that they're working on is feels like such a departure. And I haven't seen the source material, so I'm just watching it. Like, I'm interested, and they're finally progressing the story. Like, the first 4 episodes were just like, this is kind of what's happened after the end of the first season. The whole first season, he's like building a party, and then they go on an adventure, and they have to fight somebody, and then they both, like, a bunch of the party members get really fucked up, and then it culminates with him having sex with the love interest, and then she leaves. Like he wakes up and she's gone. And it's not like she was kidnapped, she left. And so the second season is about him finding his family and him dealing with like that kind of trauma of like the abandonment and like how it's been affecting him. Cause like he's supposed to be like 30, I think, something like that. So it's been okay. I mean, I'm probably in it now, so I'm probably done. I'm like probably gonna finish it. But it's been okay.
I mean, I'm looking at the trailer that just happened to be playing while we're talking about it, and I mean, it looks really good. It definitely looks good.
Well, he just got to the school, which is what's happening right now. Like that happened in the last episode. The first season's animation feels much better, but I want to be surprised. The other anime that I've been that I was watching and then dropped was the Reborn as a Vending Machine. I Now Wander the Dungeon. It is very wholesome. Like I like it, but you can tell that the story is going to be very thin. It feels like a happy version of Goblin Slayer.
Yeah.
And like it's going to be super flat. The characters are not going to grow a huge amount. It is going to be straight up like, you know, just a regular show, just regular people. Almost like it's going to be like it's really going to be episodic, where it's going to be this is the thing that happens this episode.
It's very slice of life, but like put into an isekai.
Yeah, and the production quality's not super high either. Like, it's a lot of stills, a lot of like, we're panning across this still image.
I kind of feel like Zom 100 that's the only thing it has going for it right now, is that it looks good. Like, because I have almost the same complaints about Zom 100 because it looks good. The characters they're not the best characters, but they're likable, right? Like same thing. Like it's
very tropey,
right? Yeah, it's probably the same thing in Vending Machine, right? But like at the same time, it's so boring. You want the characters to learn lessons. You want it to be less slice of life, more. You want it to be more them dealing with the conflict of the world, and it's more or less they're just living in the conflict of the world and dealing with real world problems in their new world. So it's like, okay, why are we in the new world then? Like, why couldn't we have this? Like, it would mean more if it was happening in the real world. Like, he'd actually become overcoming real world problems. Instead, he's overcoming fantasy problems.
Yeah, and he has like plot armor the entire time.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know.
So like that's why I dropped it. Like when I started the third episode, after they're just cooking and eating, I'm like, this is not the show I want to watch.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It was I mean, I'm still going to watch it just because I'm really curious. It's only 5 episodes in. If it's a 12-episode run, I really have low doubts for it. The last episode looked great. They fought a zombie shark that grew legs. Yeah, I know.
I saw that in the live action.
Yeah, so it was weird, but it was cool. I mean, it looked great. The animation was good, and the music is really good in that show, too, which I feel like anime is just learning. Like, if we put really good music, like if we just hire, like, some bands and stuff to do some music for us, like, we can get some style points, you know?
I mean, if we're talking about it the same way we were talking about what we like about anime, I feel like the story is very thin, production quality is very good. I don't know about the music, nothing for me to remember, but like I feel like it's too thin on the other things, that it's not the show you kind of want to watch.
I feel like that's what we need to do. Like when we have like a season end, we should have a rating scale where it's like style, substance, likability, you know, things like that. We should decide like 3 or 4, like 4 to 5 categories maybe, and scale all of the animes once they finish. I mean,
like it makes sense to me.
That would only be at the end of each season. Like it wouldn't happen every time we do the anime intermission, but you know, it would be pretty much like we could do a recap on those days.
Well, and there's also like 2 anime that we were gonna talk about, and then we just like kind of dropped along the way. Like Baki and Record of Ragnarok are those 2. Like I just don't know if I could handle more Baki because I feel like it's not going to innovate at all. And Record of Ragnarok is the most shonen-y shonen ever, with like, it feels like a 90s shonen. It feels like I'm watching fucking Dragon Ball Z in the way they elongate every fight.
Yeah, if you like put it on the scale we're currently like trying to imagine here, it'd have like it's like doesn't hit the style mark, it doesn't hit the innovation mark, it has no substance in the story, and so it's like you're just watching it to watch it. There's nothing that's drawing you to it, you know?
I understand that Baki is satire, right?
Yeah.
Baki's 100% satire, but I feel like Record of Ragnarok is trying to be satire and doing it poorly.
I really like when people use mythology and they're like, oh, here's this guy. But every time they bring someone in, you're like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, this is so weird. Like, I don't know. It's very anime. It's an anime.
Like, you need to pick a side, right? Like, you either need to make it full One Punch Man or not.
Yeah.
Because I feel like maybe if the production quality was a little bit higher, like the art style was a little bit different, I would be more impressed. I'd be more willing to watch it. But the art style is not super polished. It just makes me not want to watch it. And they drag so long. Every fight is like 5 episodes. And you're just like, help me.
But look, he's fighting a Tyrannosaurus Rex, Zach. He's naked and he's fighting a Tyrannosaurus in his hyperbolic mind chamber.
Baki's different. Baki's self-aware.
Yeah, I love Baki. Baki is like one of those. Oh my god, like the trailer is playing right now, and you just look at it, and it's so insane. But speaking of things that are like, I don't want to know if it's self-aware or if it's just like, it's just like my favorite anime of the season, and so I want to give it praise. Like, I like it more than Bleach right now, but I think it's just because it's new. Let's talk about Jujutsu Kaisen.
Oh, Jujutsu Kaisen. You mean like My Villain Academia arc?
That's exactly what's happening right now. Well, that's the shonen curse, right? Is the main group is never as interesting as the ancillary characters. Or the villains, for that matter.
They have to spend seasons growing these characters, whereas we established who these characters are off what was his? I don't remember what his name is, but they established his backstory between the movie, a few appearances in the anime, and then 4 episodes.
Are you talking about Toji or Geto? The partner or the guy?
The partner.
Geto, yeah.
Yeah, like they established his whole backstory. And like everything we needed to know had made him like a redeeming character. He feels like one of the fucking Arnkar from Bleach.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, he's this tortured soul. Like he didn't choose this. This is just something that happened to him, and he just broken mentally.
But I think that's kind of what makes it good though, like as opposed to Bleach, is because with Bleach we have 15 Arrancar, 27 Quincy, and it's like it kind of turns into that like, okay, we just have to battle through these people, and you just want to be with the legacy characters, right? But in Jujutsu Kaisen, those character arcs and those redeeming qualities have now become so rare that they feel very genuine, that like, oh, this story is circling around these two people and this conflict. Like Geto and Gojo right now, it's such a dynamic relationship. And that 3-episode arc was one of the best arcs. Like 3 episodes. And honestly, it could have been a movie. It was so good. I really loved the Geto, Gojo, and when they had Toji, the guy who didn't have any curse energy fighting. Such a good arc. Like all the way to the end when Geto left. Like, oh my god.
I think part of the reason it feels so good is the same reason that the My Villain Academia felt so good, was because it contrasts so heavily with the story that's already being told. Like the main characters feel so vanilla, so happy, so
it's also,
I can do anything. Like it's 100% shonen, and then you get to see like characters that actually have dynamics and are like have flaws, whereas like when the main characters have it doesn't really feel real, because it's like, oh, it's somehow going to be turned into a strength or something.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The problem with the main characters is their main motivation, and you also know that they have a little bit of plot armor. And even though we already knew who Geto and Gojo were, because we've been bouncing back and forth between past and future, learning their backstories, it's still dynamic to see them grow, because they do have flaws, and we know that those flaws are going to lead to actual consequences, as opposed to, like you said, strengths.
Yeah, and it's frustrating to watch. Like the first season of JJK, I was not really impressed with. The movie was okay. The movie was like 7.5 for me.
Yeah.
But the beginning of the second season is so much better. But like, I like Gojo more than I like any of the main cast, and like Geto's super cool too. It's just I hate those 3 characters because they feel so tropey, and like almost all of the characters feel really tropey, and like they're not really dynamic at all. The ancillary characters feel really flat, and to understand the motivation of the characters that we've like only had real glimpses of, I think does more to flush out the story. And it's just like Dragon Ball, right? Like nobody's favorite character is Goku. All right,
no, I hope not anyway.
Nobody's favorite character Naruto is Naruto.
I hope not
Right.
anyway.
So I wish more anime would do this to like not be like, oh, it's going to be disruptive. No, it's not disruptive. It's storytelling. Like we need to know why these characters act the way they do and how different Gojo acts relative to how he used to act.
Yeah, it's the Gojo and Geto relationship almost summarizes the entire good versus evil conflict that a sorcerer should experience when they come across an immovable, almost moral wall, because Gojo is the immovable moral wall. He's perfect, right? He's the chosen one. He's the Neo. But Geto is the normal person who, in face of that sort of genius, has to decide, like, am I going to live in the shadow, or am I going to, basically, am I going to toe the line as a Jujutsu Kaisen sorcerer and live a life of servitude to the humans, right? And in turn to Gojo, the most powerful sorcerer, or am I going to make my own path? And is making my own path evil? Unfortunately, through the way of genocide, yes, but like that's the ultimate conflict, right? And that's a life conflict. Like that goes with everything.
And when we watch it, even like keeping the perspective of what happened in the first season in the movie, you kind of understand that Geto like he knows how strong Gojo is, and Gojo's strength is almost a weakness to him. It makes him a target. It makes him very overconfident. Mm-hmm. And it means that all you really have to do is outthink him instead, right? Like you don't have to be more powerful. You just have to trap him. Right. And it's that overconfidence going into a fight, which is going to ultimately, I mean, that's really what happened, right? Like, it's really what happened in the episodes. Like, you thought you were invincible, that nobody could stop you, that you were the chosen one, and then you realize that all it takes is somebody with a plan, right? Like, you can't drop yourself into every situation and expect that you're going to win every time.
Well, speaking of dropping yourself into a situation and expecting to win every time, and tropes, let's talk about Bleach. Let's talk about watching Ichigo walk for 4 or 5 episodes, and then in the latest episode be like, just hold on until I get there. Like the most Goku fucking plot line, right? Like he is
like he even had to go down Snake Road.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, come on, bro. Come on. Like it's I hate it so much. Like I love Okay, there's a lot to love about Bleach, but there is a lot to hate. Let's be completely fucking honest.
I mean, and Ichigo's part, like I don't know what it is about shonen, but like I always hate the MC. Like every time, like the MC is so bad. Like they're so cringe, and they're just so naive and confident that it's.
I feel like Ichigo and Uryu had the chance to have a Gojo and Geto kind of style relationship, where it was the dark versus light. Which path do you choose? Well, they have the same thing, but instead they're just fucking prostrating and talking about fucking power levels and like absorbing, and like it's all building to these final fights and revealing Bankais. So let's talk about it. What's been your favorite new power from the season? Because that's all that really matters, right?
We got a lot of Bankais really fast.
We had like 6 Bankais, and we got to see the other guys transform, like the whatever they're called, the new Iran cars.
I mean, I feel like it's hard not to like Rukia's. Rukia's is very pretty, and it looked really cool. And like some of the other ones were kind of shitty. Like Shinji's was okay, but he got fucking bodied, and that guy who punched things, he got bodied.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool, like implying. I like what they're doing with. So it's like, I feel like the pacing right now isn't as satisfying as the first Blood War, but I also feel like that leads to the first season of Blood War, obviously. But like that leads to like, we didn't have the buildup of waiting years and being like, they're finally back. Look at all this shit that's happening, like. But at the same time, it's like they are doing a good job in alluding to the fact that like there is going to be something bigger than Bankai at this point, and then something even bigger than Bankai because Ichigo has to come. So I don't know. It's just like it has literally just been from the first season like 26 episodes of fucking power scaling.
Like, so I had kind of alluded to this when Chris and I had talked earlier, but like the most frustrating thing to me right now is how quickly the fights are over. Like it has the opposite problem of Record of Ragnarok, where like the Rukia fight is literally half an episode. I was like, I would watch 2 episodes of this.
Yeah, I would have
Like,
watched more Rukia fight too. Yeah, it's you want to see them innovate more with their abilities, but instead you just get to see like one super ability and then it fails, and then you get to see, you know, because that's, let's be honest, that's been the pattern every time, right? It's been like someone comes, they use their thing isn't enough, the other guy has another thing, and then one more thing comes to trope the other guy's new thing, right? That's the pattern every single time.
well, and it feels like with the way that Byakuya and Rukia showed up, it feels very much like a quirk type thing where they're like learning how the power works. That's like something new, whereas like we've seen all the other characters who already know how their stuff works.
Right.
Like they're not growing anymore. It's just like a flash in the pan kind of thing. You're like, oh, it's really cool for like 5 seconds and they get bodied.
Yeah.
Right. And I kind of like watching the character growth, but it's probably because I stopped watching the series after the Aizen fight.
Same.
So I have like I have a little bit of idea what happened in between. Like I've obviously seen some stuff, but I think it's just like when we were talking about Baruto, like watching the legacy characters grow, that like the characters from the beginning get their moment to shine is always going to be very satisfying.
Yep.
And you know, obviously my favorite character made his debut in the show. So
Well, I mean, and he's gonna get a second debut too. So.
yeah, like, and it's like you could be like, oh, that means he's gonna be even more powerful.
Maybe that's why I'm upset, because Hitsugai didn't get much. He's just like, yeah, my dragon is really powerful. I'm like, we already knew that. There's no growth for you.
Well, he's gonna get another thing. I just wonder when it's gonna happen.
Hell yeah! Now I'm excited again.
So like it's all about like watching the characters you really like have their moments, and I just think that me watching Ichigo power up again is just all right.
Yeah,
Again,
the big payoff isn't what we're there for. Once again, the ancillary characters and watching them grow is more important than watching the main character have his moment. We don't care about the Mary Sue having his moment. We want to give every other person who hasn't got spotlight, they should get spotlight.
yeah, like Ichigo's got enough time in the light, right? Like we want to see these other characters. Like we're waiting for Kenpachi, and when we saw Unohana's like Bankai, like oh my god,
Right, exactly.
Like we're getting to see all these other ones and getting to experience them the first time, and it's even compared to when Ichigo did his Bankai for the first time, I feel like there's a lot more emotion attached to these characters because it feels like they have something to lose. Whereas when Ichigo often fights, it's like, it's not that we have something to lose, it's that we've watched other people lose things and then Ichigo come in and save the day.
Right. Well, I mean, we'll definitely be keeping up on all of these animes, and we'll keep you guys up in our discussions. Join us for the anime intermission every 2 weeks or so. I'm trying to keep it on a schedule, but I'm not going to promise anything right now.
You just promised every 2 weeks.
I said or so. Yeah.
If you think you made a promise, leave a comment down below.
No, don't.
And I'll thumbs it up. I will.
No, don't. Then we won't interact with you. There'll be no audience interaction.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye, everyone.